Good morning, everybody. Mark Gilbert here. It's great to be with you again on our Saturday morning Science of Mind conversation series. I appreciate you for joining us this morning, and we've got an exciting topic. In fact, my favorite topic out of the entire book, which is chapter 20, What the Mystics Have Taught, What the Mystics Have Taught. And I'll throw that title up there on the screen. And if you haven't read this chapter, I would really encourage you to do so. We're going to be pulling some quotes from it this morning and talking about what is a mystic and what's not a mystic, and what are the learnings that people who we have called mystics have done. And it's an exciting topic. We spend a lot of time in Science of Mind focusing on the world of form, this world around us, and how we can use it and change our thinking to manifest a higher and greater life in the physical world. And that's all great and good, but the Science of Mind philosophy is so much deeper than that, and includes a lot of concepts and ideas that allow us to really touch into ultimate reality, to allow us to grow and transcend this world of form into the world of spirit. And that's what I think the basic messages of the mystics tell us, and that's what we're going to be looking at this morning. As always, whenever we're doing these programs, I invite you to drop a line in the comment field. Drop your name in there and let us know who's here and watching and where you're from. I'd also invite you, we've got something on your mind this morning that's on your heart or mind that you want to share. Feel free to do that, and I'll bring that up if appropriate on the screen. We'll also talk about it if appropriate as well. So do that, and we'll stop in just a few minutes and see who all has posted their name and location in the comments and bring them up and anything and talk about them. However, I do want to just reference a little bit about where we're going, and that is in regards to this particular chapter 20. You can see it's pages 327 to 346 in the Science of Mind textbook, and we're going to be looking at some essential quotes from that. But as I have reviewed this chapter through the years, what it tells me is that Holmes is essentially addressing three key questions. He is talking about what is a mystic. We'll spend a few minutes talking about that. And then he has to also say, because of the confusion people have between psychics and mystics, he spends a few moments talking about the difference between a mystic and a psychic. So we'll look at that briefly. And then the third thing is, since the question in the title is, what have the mystics taught us? What have the mystics taught? And so we'll be covering some of the common themes that Holmes sees that the mystics before him have taught. Now, before I get into that, and again, I want to encourage those of you who are watching live, drop your name and location in the comment field. Share with me anything that's on your mind or heart today that may be relative to this topic or what's going on. It's certainly a hot day across the United States, and I know we're all wanting to stay in and stay cool if you're in the U.S. And there's a lot of other things going on, and if there's something in your mind and heart that you want to share, just drop a comment in there, and I'll bring them up in a few minutes. But when we talk about mystics, it's real easy for us to think about the fact that a mystic is something other than me. Mystics are these people that lived many years ago and had these magical, wonderful experiences that they came back and told us about, that they saw, light and luminescent feelings of sense of oneness, and, that they experienced the transcendence of their physical body, and then they tried to paint it in words, what that felt like. And, we read these things, and we've heard of so many people who have had these mystical experiences, and we've read their stories, or many of us have. That it's easy to set these people apart from ourselves, that we say, here I am living this physical life as Mark and you as you. And the mystics that we know of and have read of, we see them as something that has a different experience from us, that is totally apart from us, that is something maybe we can aspire to, but we have to sort of take their word for it in a way that this is what they've experienced, because we haven't experienced it. One of the things that Science of Mind teaches, and we often use the phrase practical mysticism to label our philosophy, is that anybody can be a mystic. You're a mystic and I'm a mystic. What we see is the teachings of the mystics have really embodied this philosophy to bring about a sense of oneness, a sense of transcendence of the world of form. Yes, let's manifest and live the greatest, highest lives here on earth, but let's also recognize that we're here to grow and evolve beyond this state of being and to taste and know spirit or oneness at the highest levels. And so living in two worlds simultaneously, knowing that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, means we live here on earth and we also live beyond the earth. We live in realms and areas that are beyond this. But if everything is one, we can sort of envision it like a hologram that every aspect of the hologram is in every part of the hologram. And some people have theorized that our universe is like a hologram, that you can take parts of something and divide it up and divide it up and divide it up. As much as you divide it up, every little essence that you hold up contains all that's in the whole. And that's how a hologram works. It's basically, you can take a hologram where it looks at a 3D image and you can slice it and slice it and slice it. And each slice contains the entire picture. And similarly, our universe has that same sense to it, that there is a sense of, no matter how we slice up in our awareness or consciousness, this universe in which we're living, that the entire universe is contained within every slice. We hear the famous quote from, I think it was William Blake, who said that there's a universe in a grain of sand, and that every grain of sand contains a universe. And that is true. If you look at a grain of sand, within that is the essence of all that is. And so when we talk about transcendent experiences of the world of form, everything is in that grain of sand. Everything is in every aspect of the universe. No matter how we slice up the universe in our mind, the entire non-dual world exists in every spot and in every essence. And that's kind of hard for us to wrap our minds around, but that's one of the things we'll see that the mystics have taught us, is that sense of non-dual unity within all. Okay, so let's jump into it. Again, if you're here listening, and Shay is in Cedar Ridge, Colorado, into house. She's into house. That's great, Shay. Thanks for being with us today. And I love this so much, holographic universe. Amen. Yeah, we do tend to want to divide things up. There's an old joke I like to say is that there's two kinds of people who divide things into twos and people who don't. And the joke, of course, is that the person who divides has just divided everything into two. But in essence, we're all those people. A part of our consciousness wants to divide things into this and that, this thing, that thing. We divide them all up. But in essence, when we grow and evolve into our awareness of oneness, we recognize that there is no division. The division is totally in our consciousness. And so when we look out at this world and we see everything in it which appears separate and apart from us, what the mystics have taught is that that's really inside us. It's inside everything. It's inside our consciousness. We're going to get more into that in just a moment. Again, if you're here, love the comments. Be sure to drop your notes in the comment field. Let me know where you're from and what thoughts are on your mind. But let's look at what is a mystic. What is a mystic? Knowing that you are a mystic. And so we can point at people, like Swedenborg or many of the other Christian mystics like Teresa de Sevilla or, I'm losing the track of the names in the moment, but you can look up all the various mystics. In fact, we would often call Ernest Holmes a mystic because he had mystical experiences. So there's these people we call mystics. But who is a mystic and what does it mean to be a mystic? Here are some words on the screen that come from the Science of Mind textbook and how Ernest Holmes defines a mystic. He says it's not a mysterious person, but it's one who has a deep inner sense of life and is unity with the whole. That's a key concept. Somebody who is sensing a unity with the entireness of all that is. And somebody that truly senses that is a mystic. Because most people walking around don't look at life that way. They look at life in parts and separate. And there's the world out there and the world of my thoughts. And we divide things up in that way. Holmes also says that a mystic is one who intuitively perceives truth and without mental process arrives at spiritual realization. It's just somebody who experiences the deep oneness and truths of the universe. They just come into them in a way that we have no explanation for how we know them. We've all had intuitive experiences, or we have that gut feeling that we get That gut feeling is really our intuition telling us something. Sometimes it's a warning or a call to action in our life, or maybe a path we need to take in our life. But we all have those feelings of intuition, knowing they come from somewhere beyond us. How many artists have you heard about who say, oh, I'm just capturing what comes through me? The books I write are simply words that I hear and I put them on paper. The artistic form that I'm creating is something that came from a transcendent aspect of myself. I am just allowing myself to be a vessel to bring it forth into this material world. Those experiences of artists and all of those are a tapping into that intuitive knowingness of the oneness of the universe. And this is something that we can all do. It's something we can all do. We tend to put mystics up on some sort of pedestal. The ones I was trying to think of the names of a moment ago, but we can reference Holmes and Swedenborg and Emerson and Thoreau and many others. They're just like us. All they have done is practiced and practiced and practiced to where they could have a spiritual experience. Now, yes, there are those people who have flashes of insight that just come out of nowhere and they feel like they've become quote unquote enlightened. And it can come in a moment's notice, just like that. But many people, it's a gradual, slow process. Think about how you might have learned mathematical skills. You had to start with, knowing your numbers, and then working up to addition, and then subtraction, and algebra, and then calculus. And as you continue on, the higher and higher levels of math have to be built on an understanding of the lower levels. Think about trying to play a musical instrument. You want to play the guitar, the first thing you do is learn how to hold the guitar, and then to hold the string chords, and to learn your notes. And it takes practice and practice and practice. And somebody who's a virtuoso in any particular talent or ability has to develop the skills to do that. So we all have within us the talent to play the guitar, or to do math, or to be a scientist. A lot of times we defer that the scientists say X, Y, and Z, and we assume that they are telling us what they have learned through their scientific knowledge and testing. But any of us has within the ability to take a path and go deeply within it, and to learn it and to get the experiences of that deep path. And so within us is the ability to become a mystic. If we wish to become a mystic, all it means is setting the intention to do that and to practice it and grow that aspect within us. And that's why all of our classes in Science of Mind encourage spiritual practices, because we want you not only to understand consciously the idea of oneness or these concepts that are in the quotes that are on the screen, but we want you to experience them. We want you to experience them deeply. Okay, so a mystic is anybody who's gone through all of these experiences. Yes, they can have immediate flash of enlightenment, but they can also have a series of calculated processes and practices that lead them ultimately to a recognition and having those enlightened experiences. And I know for myself, I've had those. I've not had the flash, but I've had the buildup over time. And more trusting my intuition and listening to spirit and knowing that it's spirit speaking to me. And the more I do that, the more I can hear the messages and the wisdom that is coming through for me. The more I can sit in meditative practice, the more I can taste into the oneness. And we all have that ability. We all have that ability. But probably one of the reasons I like this chapter the most is because when we're always navigating around life, we look to the people who've gone before us, who had the experiences, and say, here's what I've experienced. Here's what I've learned from this. And a lot of times we have to place our faith and trust that what they're telling us is accurate. If we want to double check it, go down the path and learn what they've learned as well. Okay. But we also sometimes, when in not feeling like, well, is this really coming from God or spirit? Are we really having this illumined experience and tasting of the spiritual universe? Is it really coming from spirit? And that brings us to the question, but towards what's the difference between a mystic and a psychic? Because sometimes we can have psychic experiences and it may not truly be the divine message or essence of the divine. And so here's a couple of quotes on the screen from this chapter where Holmes makes the division between a mystic and a psychic. And you can see that a mystic doesn't A mystic does not read human thought, but rather he senses the atmosphere of God. And so a psychic, on the other hand, is having their impressions that they receive, that they get from outside themselves, and they label it as something outside themselves. It's flavored by their own personality and their own thoughts. So a psychic sees largely through his own or another's subjective mentality. Consequently, his impressions are more or less colored by the vibration of his own or another's thought. He's subject to hallucinations or false impressions of every description. That's why, generally speaking, no two psychics see the same thing. So we've all heard and visited psychics or seen psychics on TV and had their experiences, and sometimes they're accurate and sometimes they're not. And it's always, exciting when you hear them predict something or have a message that seems to be from beyond that has a degree of validity from it. And that's not to say that a psychic can't touch into something greater, but it's a recognition that somebody who is having psychical experiences often is tapping into their own impressions and the impressions of the people around them. And what we're talking about with true mysticism is to get our human self out of the way, and to really taste into and touch into that divine. The more you practice it, the more you experience it. Because it's real easy when you start off to say, is this God speaking or is it my own mind reflecting what I want to hear? It's a process we teach in our classes called visioning, where visioning is opening ourselves up and listening to the divine ideas in relative to specific questions we ask. We throw a question to the universe and ask for information to come through us. And I know that many people, when they're first learning the visioning technique, they often say, I don't know if that's me giving what I want to hear, or is it something else? Is it coming from beyond? And we have to sort of, over time, we make that distinction. We learn to discern between when we're using our own thoughts to flavor the message and when we are truly tasting and touching into something that is beyond us. Yeah, Shay, Jesus, Buddha, Dalai Lama, me and you, we're all mystics. We're all mystics. And we hold Jesus and Buddha and the Dalai Lama and Muhammad and many other teachers up as having been mystics, and they all have been. And we have seen in many cases how mystical teachings get transformed by the human natures of organizations that get put around them. But when we always go back to the essence of these spiritual teachings and these spiritual teachers and what they originally said, we get into the fact that their original messages were always driven by a mystical nature, a mystical reflection on the truth and the oneness of the universe. And if we go back to their original sayings, unfiltered by the years and decades and eons of other people trying to interpret them or use them for other purposes, if we go back to the essence of their teaching, we find a true mystical nature within it. Okay. So that brings us to the final question, is what have the mystics taught? What have the mystics taught? And Holmes, in this chapter, after he studied and read a number of mystics, he came up with 5 themes that he outlines in this chapter 20. And that the mystics taught unity, individuality, ultimate salvation for all, evolution, and cosmic consciousness. Okay. Again, if you're watching live, I'd encourage you, drop your name in the comment field, put your location in there, let me know who's watching, where you're from. If you got a question or comment about anything that I'm talking about, please drop a question in there. I'd love to dialogue with you on anything that's on your heart or mind this morning, and anything that you drop in there that is relevant to our conversation today, we'll bring it up and jump into it. So and those of you who've watched me before, I enjoy these opportunities to come and talk with you. And those of you who know me know that you can wind me up and I can get going on this content and talk about it. And if it's beneficial, I'm very happy that you get something out of it. But I also want to dialogue with you if you're watching live. Okay, that said, here are the topics that Holmes finds for it. Now I want to stop here and share something else with you. And it is, I was thinking about this morning of why I really appreciate this chapter and Holmes trying to look for common themes between what mystics have come back and said that they've experienced through their mystical experiences. And it relates to a book I read last year. I'm a big fan of Ken Wilber, and he wrote this book called Finding Radical Wholeness. And if you like Wilber, I recommend this. His books are kind of iterative. He comes upon ideas, and then all of his books build on prior books. And this being his latest book has a lot of content that you might find in prior books. But there was in this book, he particularly references mystics, and I wanted to read a quote from his notes section in the back of the book. And specifically, he's talking about a technical aspect in his text that he then makes this particular comment on. He says the point for both of these mystics that he's talking about, Plotinus and Nagarjuna, is that the point for both of them is that words, concepts, and symbols just don't work when it comes to knowing ultimate reality. And knowing ultimate reality is what a mystic is doing. They're knowing truth beyond the world of form into the world of spirit and understanding and knowing the ultimate truth of life. So when it comes to knowing ultimate reality, words and symbols are insufficient. Instead, one must have a direct and immediate experience, not an explanation of it to truly know it. So no matter what I'm saying here with words and what Holmes is saying in these words and what Wilber's saying in this book with these words, we have to have our own direct experience of it. And so we have to go through the practices and to move towards understanding totally what that is experience gives us. He says there is a general agreement on this by the mystics worldwide, East and West. So all the mystics say, if you truly want to know these themes that Holmes is talking about or about what the mystics have taught, you need to have the mystical experiences yourself. You need to ground it in your own spiritual practices that lead you into touching and knowing ultimate reality in your own way. Continuing reading Wilber for a moment. There's also a general agreement among the most sophisticated mystics that this realization is of a reality that is deeply non-dual or not two, where the not two means, to the extent that it can be put into words, which is not very much, that there is a non-duality, a oneness, or a wholeness of, there's a oneness, a non-duality, or a wholeness, and he's about to give you some things that seem to be opposites, but they're both one. That's the key point here. So where there is that there is a non-duality or a oneness or a wholeness of infinite and finite. Infinite would be God or beyond this world. Finite is here in the physical world. Of subject and object. The objects appear out there. The subjectivity is within us. When we see something, that out there is the object and we're the subject. Formless and form. Everything we experience out in the world is form, but we also know in a non-duality there's a world of non-form. And so the world of non-form or spirit is one with the world of form. The unmanifest and the manifest. God in essence that is beyond us, the things that we would consider non-material are the non-manifest. The things that are in the physical world are manifest. Spirit and matter. I always talk about the fact that we live in multiple realms at one time, world of spirit, mind, and matter, but they're all one. There is a non-duality between them. Again, back to that grain of sand thing. In the grain of sand, which is not really a grain of sand, is non-matter and matter. It's spirit, mind, and form. Everything is everywhere in the hologram of the universe. The spirit, mind, and matter. And everything that we say is not two is really one. Between heaven and earth, nirvana and samsara, good and evil. This non-duality applies to any other pair of opposites you want to mention, with ultimate reality remaining not two. That's the key point, is that everything is not two. There is a oneness, wholeness to everything. And that's the key that Wilber's getting at and that Holmes is getting at in this particular chapter. I want to drop a couple of terms on you real quickly. Let me multitask for a second. In the Hindu tradition, they talk about we have three basic states of consciousness. Waking consciousness, like right now, you're hearing me, you're playing on your computer, you're online, what's going on? We're in a waking state. We also have a dreaming state. We go to sleep at night and we dream. We're in a dreaming state. And the third state is a sleeping non-dream state. So it's always been recognized in our states of consciousness. We're either awake, we're asleep dreaming, or we're asleep and we're not dreaming. In the Hindu tradition, they say there are other states of consciousness that we can attain. They're called Turiya and Turiyatita. And Turiya means the fourth state, and Turiyatita means beyond the fourth state. What's the fourth state? Well, you can go in, I'm putting the words up there so you can write them down and go Google these later and you can find out on your own. And I've written some stuff on my website about it as well. But if you're not familiar with them, what these talk about, the fact is that when we move beyond the three states of consciousness, waking, dreaming, sleep, non-dreaming, that we can move into states of different states. And that Turiya is that witness consciousness. So have you ever been in a meditative state and you have gotten a sense of I have this essence within me that is witnessing and seeing the world? It's like so much of our time we're judging and relating and labeling everything outside of us. But what the Turiya is witness consciousness. And it's a state that we can get to in our meditative practices where we recognize that I'm seeing things outside myself. And there is something in me that is witnessing them. There is a part of me that is looking around and witnessing this world form that I'm experiencing. I'm a witness to my feelings. I'm a witness to my meditative states. There is something in me that is beyond me, that is beyond this physical body and what I normally call Mark and the ego Mark that's interacting and has the stories of his personality and life in the world. There's a part of me that really is a witness to all of this. And that's the essence within us, that's spirit. That's the spirit in us, experiencing the life through us. Holmes wrote later in his life that he really loved the way that Indian teacher Aurobindo put it, is that the reason we exist here is for the bliss of the divine. Why does all this exist? We exist so that God or spirit can experience the life through the experiences we're having. And through that experience, good and bad, the universe, spirit, is experiencing bliss. So we're here for bliss. Not only our personal bliss, but the bliss of spirit, who's experiencing life as this witness within us. So Turiya is the fourth state, where we're transcending all of this world and we're witnessing it and recognizing that consciousness within us is the witness. Turiyatita is a form of consciousness that stands beyond that. It goes beyond fourth. How can there be something beyond that? Well, here's another term for you. You can go Google headless exercise. Headless exercise. It's a process that was created by a guy by the name of Douglas Harding back in the 20th century. And it's simply a meditation, which I can very quickly describe for you. It's the fact that when you are in this witness consciousness, looking out at life around you and seeing yourself and aware of yourself as a witness, witnessing life, and you're thinking, okay, that's out there and I'm witnessing, that's out there and I'm witnessing, that's out there and I'm witnessing it. That in actuality, all of that, because remember, everything is one, all of that is inside you. And what his exercise was to recognize that as you're looking out there, what can you see of yourself? You can see your arms, your legs, your chest, maybe a little bit of your nose, but you can't see your head. You can't see your head. So what he calls to do in this exercise is to look out at life and see everything that you're experiencing as being something that is enfolded within you, to imagine the world outside of you, folding into and flowing into your head, the space you can't experience of your head. And when you do that, what you get into is this beyond fourth, or Turiyatita, is the Hindus called it, experience. And what does that mean? It means that in the fourth, the Turiya, I'm witnessing everything out there and recognizing that I am this witness. But then I'm also in the Turiyatita, or beyond the fourth, I'm seeing that everything out there is also inside me. And so this is something that if we can start walking around with a recognition that everything we view is really not out there, it's in here. It's in the consciousness of everybody who's watching this video. We want to say that all the world's out there and that it's me in here. But in reality, all of that is inside you. And these practices These practices of turning into and recognizing the witness within you, the practice of recognizing everything out there is inside of you, builds this mystical experience that you're not you navigating around in a physical world separate from everything, but everything out there is an experience that's really inside of you. That's why the teachings of Science of Mind, where they encourage you to change your thinking. If you can change your thinking, if everything out there is inside of you, the very nature of changing your thoughts allows you to change what's being reflected into. Many of you can hear this exercise of the headless and think about the teachings of Plato and Plato's cave analogy, where people are watching things on a screen, but it's only when they become enlightened that they recognize that the truth is the light that's coming through them, and what they're seeing on the screen is a reflection of who they are. And that's true for all of us. All of us are walking around as these seeming individuals, but we're all united, projecting a world out there that's really inside of us. So back to homes. This is fun stuff, and it's deeper than what we normally get into. This is the more metaphysical stuff that I love. That's embedded in the philosophy of Science of Mind, and so much of Holmes has this content deeply within it. He says, my absolute favorite subject and great teacher, this is Shay again, if I know all of this, why are things often so difficult? I get to having such a hard time when I'm flying on the wings of the Holy Spirit. Yeah, it's true. I know, and I have this conversation with people today. There's so many people struggling with the events going on in the world. And that's not to say I don't too. When we get into our humanness and our separation and seeing everything is separate and apart from it, then we can very easily start embedding and giving our power to things that we see out there, that the power and the thought, it's not a reflection, it's inside of us. We start saying that out there is real. We're buying into the illusion when we do that. We're buying into the sense that that's the ultimate reality rather than spirit and the unity. That's why understanding and experiencing the unity is so important, because the more we can anchor ourselves into it, the more it builds up a spiritual muscle within us that allows us to navigate that world, which appears to be out there, and to recognize, okay, that stuff is like a story, a movie that is going by on some level. It has its reality as form, but it's ultimately not real. And there's lessons for us in the collective consciousness of humanity to learn. And so the challenges that may appear on the planet now, from the political difficulties to the wars in the world and all of this, when we can move beyond all of the divisiveness that we see out there, when we can move beyond the divisiveness, we can recognize this is all just a pattern and story within the oneness for the bliss of the divine, that God is experiencing all of this and has given us free will choice to make choices about what the story is. And humanity at some weird point has decided, and decides off and on, to live in separation, to live in fear, to live in greed and separation. And at some point, we have to navigate beyond it. It's not to say that we can't, as we navigate in around the world form, take appropriate actions to live in that world as we live in it, make our decisions that are given and driven by heart and love and oneness, but to not give our power, to give our truth, to see that as what's ultimately real. The more we can stay anchored in knowing oneness, we can see it simply an experience that humanity is going through for some learning or experience. And yes, act appropriately within it in your own sphere of influence, but also hold firm to the nature that our ultimate reality transcends what's going on out there. And this too will pass. We will learn our lessons and we will move on. And you continue to be a light for the universe. Continue to be a light in your own sphere of influence with people around you. So yes, it's very difficult to stay and maintain a mystical awareness in these times, but to the degree that we can have spiritual practices that anchor us in oneness, it is going to build up that spiritual muscle to allow us to see through the stories that are out there that are really one within us. I hope this is making some sense to you. Let's go back to Holmes real quickly. We've got a few minutes, and I'm not going to be able to read all the quotes, but I do want to give you a sense of what he means by these themes that he's said are things that are trends that from him and his study and reading of mystics, what they've all said. Some of these we've already been hitting on already. Unity. The whole of God is present at every point within God. And stressing that. The readings I had from Wilbur a moment ago. All manifestation of life is from an invisible to a visible plane through a silent, effortless process of spiritual realization. We must unify in our own mentalities with pure spirit. This is what I was calling to you to a moment ago. Look beyond the divisiveness in the world of form and see the underlying unity of spirit that transcends all of that. The more we can bring that into our own mind and thinking, the more that we can move beyond the struggles and strife of the visible plane in which we find ourselves having human experiences. When we think about the fact of, I think I skipped one. Let me go back. It was unity. I think that my slides got out of order. Let's do it this way. Individuality. The higher the sense of truth, the greater will be the realization of the uniqueness of individual character and personality. Yes, we have individuality. We're individual expressions of the one. If the one expressed through all of us in the same exact ways, how would the one get the vast multiplicity of bliss experiences of all the diversity of human possibilities? So spirit allows us to move through a state of multiplicity where we feel that we're divided. So we can have these individual experiences, and through the collective, the spirit gets greater blissful experiences. Individuality in Holmes' terms means self-choice, that we can choose. We have volition. We have a conscious mind, personified spirit. Spirit comes to us in our own personalized way. We have complete freedom, but we have access to the greater power of spirit, but our own individual use of the power of oneness. That's what individuality means. Salvation. We're often taught in the traditional faith that we were born evil, and it's, we're looking for something outside of us, or some person outside of us is going to give us salvation and have eternal life. But what Holmes says, the mystics say, is that salvation is already a given to us. It's not something that we're trying to give up something to be given to us. It's nothing we even have to do. In fact, as he stresses there with the all caps, immortality is here and now. If we would awake to the fact, if we would awake to this non-duality and aware of the oneness, then we would recognize there's nothing we need to be saved from. We're already perfect, whole, and complete in and of ourselves by being a nature of the oneness of all of life. And so since each soul is some part of the whole, it's impossible that any soul can be lost. So we, and all the mystics have said, we do not need to be saved. Mark is challenged by the buttons on the slides today, apparently. Evolution. I talk about evolution a lot, but essentially, spirit embedded itself, process of involution, into everything. Spirit exists in everything. Since everything is one and everything is spirit, everything must have spirit within it. Logical. And so we're calling on ourselves to recognize that spirit embedded itself into us. We forgot the sense that we're a part of spirit, that we're unified in this oneness, and we are on an evolutionary path to remember it. Some people call it the hero's journey, that we have to wander around in life and stumble and fall and have the human experiences that challenge us, such as the current stuff we were talking about a moment ago. But that's simply us wandering in the desert to learn the lessons of this life so we can return home and know it for the first time. We were born of wholeness and oneness. We were put into the world of form, forgetting that, and we're wandering and processing back and remembering the truth of our unity. The mystics have told us that everyone is moving through individually this evolution, and that collectively all of the aspects of the one are moving through this in their own way. So everybody on the planet has their own degree of evolutional path that they're moving through. And we can see when people are elevated or further along the path from us, we call them mystics, and we aspire to them. And we can also see people who are divided in their sense of duality, and maybe they're not as far as we are in terms of, and this is not to put anybody down, because ultimately we're all going to get saved. We're all going to further along the path in time and return to oneness. But we're all on this evolutionary journey ourselves. And the whole point of evolution is for us to know wholeness, to know oneness. That's what this whole ball of wax is about. And finally, the final thing that Holmes says is an aspect of the teachings of the mystics is that there is something called the Christ consciousness or illumination. And I've been talking about that all this morning, is that within us, the spiritual practices, sometimes we can have a flash of illumination and know oneness in a moment, but for most of us, we have to go through building that process up over time through meditative practices. But eventually when we do, we get into a recognition that there is some experience that we will tap into. Those Turiya Tita states I was talking about a moment ago, the witness consciousness, and then the recognizing that everything outside is inside of us as well, and that there is no duality. We are beyond duality. The very nature of recognizing that and the very aspect that we can get into that is the Christ consciousness within us, because that wholeness, that oneness, that sense of non-duality is inside of us. And when we experience that in a conscious level, we call it the Christ consciousness. We call those moments illumination. And in moments, they are accompanied by certain experiences. I remember one I had one time where it was just the universal stars flowing at me and this sense of deep oneness. And when we have those moments, those glimpses, those taste of oneness, they affirm for us that our lives and our truth are more than the experiences that we're moving through in this human world here on earth. And that's what we're called to. And that's what the mystics have called us to. So, wow, that's a lot to take in. So if I have any kind of message for you this morning, it's that the science of mind can serve two purposes for us. Two purposes. One is it helps us navigate the physical world. When we talk about change your thinking, change your life, it's a tool in which new thought and science of mind can help us reorient how we look at life so we can change the manifestations of what's occurring in physical life. So all faiths, all religions, whether it's science of mind or other paths, spiritual paths, they all can serve to assist us in navigating this material world. But that's only one aspect of all spiritual teachings. And if we simply limit ourselves to seeing it as a tool for making our physical material life better, we're limiting the true nature of why we're here. So yes, use the science of mind to change your thinking and create a better life here on earth. But the deeper teachings of the science of mind are really calling us to transcend the earth, to transcend the form, to transcend the duality that we experience through our human experiences, because we have to anchor ourselves back into that spiritual beingness that is within us. And the more that we can anchor ourselves into the spiritual being and the oneness and the non-duality, which the teachings of science of mind offer us those through the mystics and so much more of the writings of Ernest Holmes. When we can move into those states of experience where we know that we're not simply this physical being, but we transcend it and we are spiritual beings, and that our truth lies in non-duality, that everything that we think is dual, the finite and the infinite, time and the timeless, the sense of left and right and wrong, all of those are embodied in a non-dual oneness. It's within us, and the science of mind teaches that we can attain that in our consciousness. So make sure your spiritual practices not only allow yourselves a better manifestation of your physical life, but that they're also guiding you to transcending the physical life and to anchoring your oneness, anchoring your consciousness in the oneness of spirit and God. So that's my message for today. And let's see what we got. Rachel, hands, yellow, red, heart. Rachel, Arlington, Virginia. Great that you were with us today, Rachel. And Satori Moments had bunches of those. Thank goodness. Thanks, Shay, for your comments today. I want to encourage everybody as we wind up today to think about this, to look not only at your life, but how your spiritual practices are helping you transcend and live in this oneness, this non-duality. And if you like the presentations I do here, and I'm back periodically once every month or two, and you want to know more about me, then you can visit my website. I'm scrolling it on the screen right now, consciousbridge.com. Encourage you to check that out. As I post YouTube's blogs, be sure to sign up for my newsletter, which comes out on a periodic basis. And I also want to encourage you, again, it's consciousbridge.com, that all of the efforts here at the New Thought Media Network, including this program, we're volunteers. I don't get paid anything for these programs, but the program runs through your donations. So I encourage you to go to the New Thought Media's website and click on donate and be sure and support all of the programs that you like here on the New Thought Media Network. Also, I want to thank you all for beautiful comments and questions today. Be sure to join us every Saturday for another chance to dive deeper into and embody the science of mind more fully. And as we end today, let's just simply know that within the awareness of the divine, we simply recognize and reflect a oneness, that we look outward in the world of form and recognize that everything that we see is a part of us, that we are one with all that is, that within us is a divine consciousness that we call the witness consciousness, that we use and recognize that is truly spirit within us that allows us to see and experience for the sake of the divine, for the bliss of the divine. We are experiencing this world around us. What world are we wanting and desiring to experience? And we visualize that highest and greatest for ourselves individually and for the planet. We build that vision into our awareness, and then we begin seeing that out in the world, knowing that we are bringing about a heaven here on earth. Thank you all for being with us. Hope you join us next week. And just so much. I can see a couple of quick comments. Let me just throw them up there. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you, Rachel, for your comments. There's only fear and love. Yes. And great explanation of oneness and normal living. Thank you, Terry, for being with us today. And I think it's time for me to play this video. Take care, everybody. Bye.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network, come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.